This is the Talkin' Cowboys Break, streaming live on DallasCowboys.com and the official Dallas Cowboys app.
After an 8-year run, the Dez Bryant era in Dallas is over. Cowboys officially part ways with their veteran wide receiver today after a brief visit with Jerry Jones here at the Star in Frisco. We're inside the SWBC Mortgage Studio for instant reaction, breaking it all down. Rob Phillips, joined as always by Nick Eatman, Brian Broaddus, Mickey Spagnola. Guys, this is about 3-4 months in the making, and it looked like the meeting between Jerry and Dez that was long awaited lasted, I don't know, maybe a half hour or something like that. Left the building. Mick, you saw him?
Yes.
Said his goodbyes.
Got in his car, said, didn't say too much to too many people. I think he went in the weight room, greeted a couple of guys who greeted him when he first showed up. Had two, I'm guessing, buddies, a driver, somebody else in the car with him. And I'm told he said, I'll see you guys twice this year. So let your imaginations wander with that one.
Well, I think everyone kind of thought that he was, if he does, he's going to sign with another team. When he does, it's going to be somebody on this schedule. Maybe he's already got something in the works there. Who knows? Of course, that would be tampering if it was. But I think overall, we saw this coming for a while. It's still surprising, though. There's something about it that just watching him, and we actually saw him drive off. It was kind of a surprising thing.
The timing of everything appeared that this was going to happen. Just if you look at with the OTAs, the workouts all starting on Monday, Jerry Jones, Stephen Jones, Jason Garrett, Will McClay, they waited till really the last possible minute to get this done. They had opportunities. If they were going to bring him back, they had opportunities for that. They could have told him the plans. But Dez went a long time without hearing anything from the front office here. And so as you started to see things with the signings of the free agents that they had with Hearns, Thompson, then you look at what they've done with the 30 visits, how they've worked guys out, it just became very clear to me. And I said it on our roundtable that I just, too many things were lining up for this day to happen. I just never felt like that they were going to bring him back under these circumstances. And, it's just, decisions made by the front office. Jerry Jones talked about, once again, input from a lot of different voices, and that's always been his style. And whether that's the coach, other front office members, maybe even some players there, all had a hand in this one.
Get the idea that there was a consensus on what they wanted to do, but the last person that had to sign off on it was Jerry Jones? I
don't think Jerry Jones wanted to release Dez Bryant.
Yeah.
I don't. This goes back to very much the, Jerry Jones, his say what you want. I think the love he has for his players reminds me so much of what Al Davis, the love he has. Al Davis would blame the coaches before he blamed the player. And I think Jerry Jones really does love Dez Bryant. And I think that some things they lined up. There were people that lined up and said, we cannot have him here anymore. And Jerry is a very good listener. He is a very good listener. And, when you have a large number of people that are lining up against people or against a guy or whatever, he's going to make that decision. And this was one I think it was very painful for him to have to make.
Is this a good move?
I'm still torn by it because I guess we should read the release that the Cowboys put out. It was a statement from Jerry, but it doesn't say why. And I think you can go down a lot of avenues on why. I think it takes a lot of nerve to do what they did. And I'll just
but at the same time, you're right. I mean, at the moment, if he were to have stayed, he would have been the best wide receiver on this football team, and certainly the most accomplished receiver. But you know what? They did this in 2009. They got rid of an all-pro, Pro Bowl wideout who was less than a year into a big-time extension, Terrell Owens. And I'm not directly comparing the two, but they did it. That was a chemistry move. And this was probably mostly a production move, but I bet there might be a little bit of locker room involvement here in terms of helping the locker room out. Stephen Jones came out earlier in the offseason and said, first time I think I've heard anybody say this, some of his off sideline stuff could be a distraction. He's got to do a better job of handling his emotions. I think that probably was at least a little bit of a factor here. Don't you think?
They didn't let him then. You know, I mean, I see that. I mean, I hear what you're saying, and I don't know exactly which side of the fence I'm on here, but I've heard them say that kind of stuff, like he needs to do better at this and he needs to do better at that. But he's not getting the chance here to do that.
Right.
But I'll answer that first. I mean, I threw it out there, and I want Brian's take. I think this won't be a good move unless they do something with this money. If they're going to save money, then they need to spend the money. They need to do something else. They cut Dez because they are going to get this player or trade for this player. It better not be done, because what are you saving money for?
I will say this. They needed to free up some money just to have money under the cap to get your draft picks done and all that kind of stuff. But I hear you. I mean,
there was other guys to cut for that.
I could have found $5 million.
You could have done that. You could have done that.
Brian,
so what you're saying, if are you excluding them using that money to extend Zach Martin? Because if you extend Zach Martin, it should cost less than his $9 million.
Right.
So there's got to be another pot at the end of the rainbow that you're looking for to use the $8 million.
It rains a lot in Seattle.
Yeah,
and
the implier is doing his best right now to try and convince.
Yes, I want them to go get Earl Thomas. That's what I want them to do, or go get a safety that they can spend this money on.
Yeah, I think that in Cowboy Nation eyes, if they sit here and giving the money to Zach Martin is the right thing to do. But yeah, I think that the Cowboys, if they really wanted to say, okay, we did this to try and, as the last line, help our football team, the best interest.
We did this because.
Yeah, exactly, the best interest of our football team. I feel like though that if Seattle's sitting there without a second-round pick, they don't have a third-round pick either. But if you're sitting there and you say, okay, we took Dez Bryant's money and we went and got one of the best safeties in the National Football League. And said Seattle, and I think Seattle's a little bit over a barrel right now. I really do. And I haven't talked to John about it at all. But I know that they don't have a second round pick, they don't have a third round pick. And John Snyder is well aware that he's going to have a difficult time re-signing this guy after next year. So John might be in the mode of let's get something now and go. You're right, Nick. You go make a move and you go get something like that because you released Dez Bryant. Now that's considered a good football move.
Yeah. You're going to pay a safety $14 million a year? Because that's what he wants.
Yeah, I think that you have to. I think that you have to look at everything is negotiable, in my opinion. He wanted Seattle wanted a 1 and a 3, and you're going to give him a 2, and you're going to tell him that's my best offer. Whether you could take the 1 and the 2, or you could try for a 1 and a 3, but I'm giving you the 50th overall pick, John Snyder. If you don't want that, then I'll go trade that 50, go up, and try and draft Derwin James.
But I'm not taking him on a 1-year deal.
No, you're not. But that's what I'm saying. How bad does Earl? If you're going to make this trade, you want the opportunity to sign Earl. Again, we're talking about a trade when it's about Dez Bryant.
Well, but
yes,
there's got to be a domino.
You should take that money and try and make your football team better.
I agree. And I hear what you're saying about a 1-year deal if they were to do that, and we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves on that particular player. But he did chase down Jason Garrett before he went to the locker room and said, "Come get me."
Yeah,
so I'm just saying he may not be looking for a 1-year deal, anyways.
He's not. But the thing about it is, you would not make this trade unless you said, "I want the opportunity to talk to him first."
Yeah.
Give me permission to talk to the player and his representative. If they can hammer something out, then make the trade. If they can't, like I said, you got the draft. You've brought in several guys to have that opportunity. They're not Earl Thomas, but there's several guys that could help.
We're just speculating on that player, but we're just talking about, or I am, and I think Brian agrees. I mean, if they're going to cut him, it's got to be for something, because he was fitting under the cap.
I see what you're doing. You're trying to say, why would you let Dez Bryant go?
There's got to be a reason, because he was fitting under the cap. It was going to work.
Yeah, it was going to work, but it would have been, I think, $30 million under the cap committed to your wide receivers in a run-first offense. And we've been saying that on our shows. I know Dave was hitting this really hard. Like, something's got to give, right? I mean, you can't allocate that much resource that many resources.
They haven't even
one
drafted
position.
one of these guys yet.
See, and that's where I was going to. Let me read this.
One of those guys could be there.
Let me read this official statement from Jerry real quick, because Mick
He's right about that,
to that. He said, as an organization, we hold Des Bryant in the highest regard. We're grateful for his passion, spirit, and contributions to this team for the past 8 years. He will always be a valued member of our family. Des and I share a personal and professional relationship that's very strong, and he's one of just a handful of players with whom I have become close to over the past 30 years. This was not an easy decision. It was made based upon doing what we believe is in the best interest of the Dallas Cowboys. We arrived at this crossroad collectively with input from several voices within the organization. Ultimately, we determined it was time to go in a new direction. So, a lot of input. As you said, there's not a clear-cut reason why. And you guys are talking defensive side of the ball, maybe trying to get some help there. Offensively, how does this receiver core look? I mean, does this make the draft a huge need now? Or do you guys have confidence in Allen Hurns to step into that X spot?
Well, I think that there's several options they have at 19 if they want to go. And again, it depends on, there's people that might have Sutton from SMU ahead of Moore and Ridley. There might be people that have Moore ahead of both those. I mean, you're going to have an option at 19 to draft a guy. The guy that makes the most sense that could play the X would be Sutton. He would be the guy. Now, again, with all that being said, Hurns could play the X for you. If they draft Ridley, he could play the Z. And then you figure out what you want to do with Terrence Williams. That could be the route. You got to get Cole Beasley going back on track too. But they will have an option at 19. Now, what you have to worry about, you have to worry about Baltimore ahead of you at 17 or at 16, and you have to worry about Seattle trading out of the pick.
No, you got to worry about your decision being right.
Yeah,
that these guys can replace his production on the field.
They've made that bet, Mickey.
Yeah,
they've made.
I mean, it's a bet. It's not a sure bet.
Yeah, this is one of those things where you, again, as an organization, they've put their head down. They're going to go forward. We can question everything they're going to do. They honestly believe that they can get somebody to help them in this draft, whether it's in the 19 at 50. They believe that they can get somebody with what they currently have on the roster, that they can get somebody to replace Des Bryant.
So,
Nick, you're sighing over.
No, I keep looking at this Star magazine, which everybody in here contributed to and has done a lot of good work. Brian, I know, did a ton of profiles, and I'm looking at the cover. Sutton, Kirk, James Washington.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking one of these guys, and it could be more. It could be, literally, DJ Moore. It could be more guys than that. But between 19 and 50, is this going to be a situation where they're like, hey, just take the best guy available at 19. If we don't get the receiver there's some good ones we like at 50.
I don't want to turn this into the draft show again, but yeah, you're absolutely right. They're going to have an opportunity. The problem is some of those guys like Sutton, if you want to trade back up in the second round, if you want to make a pick at 19 where you take a linebacker and then you want to take 50 and go up, there's a possibility of ways of doing that.
But I thought you already spent that.
Yeah, I threw that.
Well, I'm just saying if they didn't make the.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I know.
But okay, that's a good point. Let's say that is on the table. Let's say that the fifth, the second, and maybe the third, or something in that range is going to the Northwest. If you knew that, does 19 have to be a receiver?
I think you would have to say yes.
And they hate doing that. They hate going into the draft thinking that way.
Yeah, but they protected themselves in a way where, again, Hurns can play the X.
Yeah.
If you draft Ridley, he's a Z. Moore could play the X or the Z. Sutton, I think, is going to be an X. It's a 6'3" guy. That's a big man that, and we'll see how the development of him is. But I don't think they've painted themselves a core, because I feel like, though, but again, I just want to say this. You have to worry about a couple of teams ahead of you. And I think you have to worry about the Ravens, and I think you have to worry about the Seahawks. Not that the Seahawks will take a guy that somebody knows now that Dallas is going to take one of these receivers at 19, and all of a sudden Seattle gets their second-round pick back. Seattle gets a third-round pick back.
Yeah.
Because somebody knows Dallas did it to draft Des Bryant. They did it to the Baltimore Ravens. Jerry Jones moved up ahead of Ozzie Newsome to take Des Bryant. I think you have to be concerned. But, yeah, They probably feel like they protected themselves with the guys they currently have on the roster. Is it as good as Des Bryant? No, it's not. Is it similar in some ways? Yes.
Okay, That's great. That's great information. And all of a sudden now it looks like wide receiver. You throw in linebacker, you throw in defensive line. I mean, safety. There's several spots now where they could go in certain directions. And we'll find out in a couple of weeks what they do.
I think that all along they've kept this very open. I think if you think about the 30 visits and who they visit, I think they've kept it open with receivers, with offensive linemen, with linebackers. I think they're very open to the possibility. Last year we saw them visit defensive ends and corners. They really didn't telegraph anything what they're doing so far this year with the way they've kept their 30 visits really open.
Let me ask you this, and this is hindsight at this point, but how would you evaluate where Dez was after the season and where you think he could have been in this offense going forward if they decided to keep him? I mean, we've seen them do this before as a franchise. They will part ways with a guy maybe a year early before it's a year too late. And Dez had 2 years left on his deal. You know, they did it with, I think Greg Ellis was a guy, DeMarcus Ware. It doesn't always work out that way.
Right.
Do you think he could have worked it out with Dak Prescott on the field? Or do you think the writing was on the wall, they were not a match together on the field?
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said for that. And I also want to say this about Dak. You know, I think it's high alert for him now too.
I agree.
Hey,
I agree.
You know, and who's to say that this is exactly just them two couldn't get along? But I think Dez was a great receiver for many years with Tony throwing him the ball.
Yep.
And now all of a sudden he forgot how to play. No one believes that. But this is Dak friendly. Maybe Dez isn't considered Dak friendly anymore. That's fine. But they better find somebody that can be friendly to it. And Dak needs to me. Dak needs to step up and play better as well. I mean, this isn't just about all of a sudden they don't mesh well. I mean,
we could be doing an emergency show next year with a lot of changes.
Well,
you know, that's possible.
Does this move make this team better?
Yeah, I think that's a fair question. That's
because
a fair question.
Better in what regard?
I still need.
they're not better on April 13th.
I still need a lead receiver. I ain't got one.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. I still need an insurance policy at linebacker because I ain't got one.
Right.
I still need a backup offensive tackle. I don't think I have one. Unless they find a guard,
Fleming
and Fleming and
Martin.
Hale stays at right tackle,
Right.
and Fleming's my backup.
Right.
So there's a lot of things they've got to figure out here between now and July 23rd.
But you don't go buy a new house typically unless you sell the other one. So that might
I got you.
That might be what they're doing here. But I'm totally with you. Right now they're not better. They're not a better team than they were yesterday. But if this money makes them better down the road, we'll see. But as of right now, they're not.
But you didn't answer my question.
What was it?
Do you feel like the Dak-Dez marriage could have been fixed? Or do you think the organization just felt like, look,
we're dancing around it, Rob. We're dancing around that.
Because that was the big question at the end of the season, right? Did these two play together?
I say no. I'll go no.
And there wasn't dislike between them. I'm not saying that.
I mean, workings on that one.
I'll since we in the business of speculation, and I understand Mickey.
I'm asking on the field chemistry.
What happened? Why did it?
Mickey will argue at the end of the playoff run that they were rolling along pretty good.
What was wrong with what he did the year before?
Yeah.
Right, but
all of a sudden.
Yeah, I think all of a sudden, I think teams said, you know what, we're not letting you have that.
Well, that's right.
You're not getting Beasley for 7 yards over the middle, and you're not getting Witten anymore. You, Dak, have to make that throw to Dez, and Dez has to run the right route.
I think you're right putting Dak on blast. I think you're right about that.
All the time, and I don't think Dak is capable of doing that kind of stuff that Romo did at that point.
At this point in his career, he's 2 years in. Yeah.
But
I think it's more about the quarterback than it is about the receiver.
Yeah, but
that's what I'm saying.
But Robert Griffin did it his first year too, and they figured him out too. I mean,
But they figured him out. It wasn't that it was the wide receiver's fault.
No, I think there are certain routes that are good for Dak, and I think that some of the stuff that Dez does well, the stuff that Dak does well, after a couple of years of seeing that, and coordinators saying, all right, let's take this away. I'm not saying that they couldn't do it in year 3.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have been able to kind of mesh some stuff. If Scott Linehan, he's highly touted around here.
He's another man you need to put on blast.
He could have, he can work that kind of stuff too. I'm just saying they decided after 2 years, 1 year was really good. Actually, their years were about the same. Dez's stats were about the same. They just weren't winning as many games.
See, they're running the ball, though. They threw more balls. They threw more balls this year than they did last year.
The offense overall was more efficient.
Okay,
hang on, Mick, and that's why when you had...
Oh, no, the runner.
You had Zeke
the runner and the left
season.
tackle. If you're a defensive coordinator, what would you worried about those 6 games?
Yeah.
It certainly wasn't Alfred Morris.
It's all fair.
It wasn't Beasley. It wasn't Witten.
It's all fair.
It obviously wasn't Williams.
No.
They said, I'm taking Dez out of this and see if you can beat me. And they couldn't.
That's why I ask about the offensive coordinator as well. But I say no because I feel like, though, again, could they scheme stuff up for him? They said they tried to put him in the slot. They tried to move him around.
Yeah.
So what happened in 2016? You had a rookie quarterback, a fourth-round pick, and they won 13 games.
Yeah, I think, again, the running game, too, Mickey, which you talked about. You've been harping on that, and it's right so.
But that was also over a year ago. And he's now approaching 30 years old. I mean, I guess the question needs to be asked from their mindset.
So
did you feel like...
The skills.
Is that a factor? Did it feel like, okay, he's reaching a point in his career where he's not as dynamic as he's been? And for what he's making, it's not a fit.
And I think teams played him differently last year than they did in 2016. I think that they...
let me ask you this. Is this more about then the locker room stuff, not off the field, but is it more about the locker room? Is it more about what Stephen Jones was talking about? Is it more about the... Is this more about not the ability as it is the personality?
If that's the case,
we're going to find out here in less than a week.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt.
Because if some team goes out there and grabs him, they don't know about that stuff.
Right.
They just look at the talent.
Sure.
And if somebody swoops him up and pays him,
yeah,
I think you got your answer.
But also teams need a splash too. There could be a team out there that maybe needs something like that, and Dez Bryant certainly would provide that. And they have the money for it, and let's do it. But somebody was telling me this about Brian? Was it Brian Billick? He used to always say that the reason they
Randy Moss, yeah.
Well, the reason they hire you is the reason they'll fire you.
Yeah, exactly.
And if that's kind of Dez was a passionate, explosive player.
Sure.
It was all great when they were winning, and now it's kind of the same thing. I'll say this about Dez though: every single thing that we were told about him when he was drafted has been true.
Hey, you read my mind. I was just going to go with what's his legacy here in Dallas.
Well,
by the way, he retires with a career of 531 catches.
Well, he didn't retire.
Did I say retire? I'm sorry. His career with the Cowboys has ended with 531
for now
catches, 7,500 yards, 73 touchdowns.
And what were those 73 touchdowns? A franchise record?
Yeah.
They were.
It's the best.
Sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, when he first got drafted, he was a guy that was the best player in the draft, or the most explosive, athletic, dynamic receiver, can make all these plays, jump out of the gym, but also you have to deal with some off the field stuff. He's emotional. He's got some baggage.
Cowboys have always done.
He doesn't arrive on time. He's going to miss meetings here. He's
can't run routes.
Yeah, well, okay, that was it.
It never changed.
And all of it, and everything that he was. He was proven to be, but he was still awesome. I mean, let's not forget what Mickey just said. I mean, nobody's caught more touchdowns than him. So, it's
part of one of the most infamous plays in team history. Never go away.
I just think this is more about personality conflict than it is.
I brought that up because you hear things, and Steven said it publicly. He's got to be able to control his emotions, and it factors into what's his production level like at this point in his career. What can you deal with?
I love Dak Prescott. I do. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. I think he already is there. But the honeymoon is definitely over now.
For a lot of folks.
For a lot of folks.
Yeah.
But now, when this happens, and I'm not saying...
Oh, no, this is a big move for a lot of people.
They could be best friends. I'm not saying they are or they're not. But they obviously don't mesh well together as players on the field, and the Cowboys don't feel that way. So now... it's like spotlight's on you. You got to find players that are Dak friendly, and you've got to go out and perform. I mean, the stakes have been raised for him at this point, in my opinion.
When they let T.O. go at the end of the 2008 season, they didn't really have a replacement Miles Austin emerged midway through that season. They found a guy, he made a Pro Bowl the next year. They've got to have somebody step up. Alan Hearns, a couple years ago, 1,000-yard season, 10 touchdowns, had some injuries the last 2 years. Maybe you're banking on the fact that he stays healthy. He maybe realizes that potential.
Hopefully they do a better job than when they released their previous 3 franchise players.
Yeah.
They released Troy Aikman. Quincy Carter took over. They released Emmett, or his contract ran out. Released him, right?
Released Bill Parcells released him.
And Hambrick.
Troy Hambrick
took over.
Yeah.
They released Ware. Jeremy Mincy took over?
Pretty much.
No, so you better have a better answer for this one.
Yeah, I think this is where
you released Romo.
Yeah.
Dak.
Well, that one worked.
They didn't make the playoffs.
You know, obviously they feel like
you're right.
Obviously they feel like they have guys in place that they'll be okay with, but again,
you got to be right.
Nick talks about the draft and really what it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it's saying okay, just go that route, but I think now with all the legwork that they've done, that is the consideration.
So do you worry that
I know that rookie guy is not going to be good the first year, Mickey.
Right.
That's what you're going to ask.
And they haven't been, those first round picks haven't been that good.
Well, you can go back
since the Julio Jones.
Yeah, 14.
Draft.
You could go back with Odell Beckham and those guys.
Yeah, 3 out of 25.
Yeah.
Julio, AJ Green, and Beckham.
And then Amari Cooper.
Yeah, Amari Cooper made the Pro Bowl.
He's the only one in the last 3 years that's made the Pro Bowl.
First round pick.
And if you go back to 2012, so 6 drafts, only those other 3 guys have been to the Pro Bowl.
It's a difficult position to draft.
It's a tough transition,
at least the
right?
first year. The first year, yes,
Is
absolutely.
Because of the style of offenses they play in college, and in addition to the quality of defensive backs you play against in college.
If you're a receiver at Oklahoma, you never play against press coverage in the Big 12.
Right.
It's a track meet. The kid James Washington, that's why he's a downfield threat, because nobody ever presses him or anything like that.
And in the NFL,
you get knocked around. You've got to figure out how to be a pro in the NFL early, and a lot of guys don't.
And the NFL,
not early.
You know, Sanjay Lal is not going to be sitting there with a card telling his wide receiver, okay, there's your route.
Yeah.
You know, you got to figure it out on the run.
Right.
And those guys are used to running to a spot and mostly stopping. And all of a sudden they get in here and go, oh, I got a route tree and I got 3 alternatives here and I got to figure out which one's the one that I'm supposed to run.
Is Calvin Ridley an exception because he played in a pro-style offense and his route running is pretty darn good?
Brian Daboll, who's now the coordinator at Buffalo, I mean some route trees. You look at that's where Amari Cooper came again, a different offensive coordinator there. You know, I feel like the guy that has the least route experience is Sutton. He's the one at SMU. If you look at the scheme that they play in, a lot of screens, like quick passing game stuff. You know, there's guys in this draft though that have great. The kid Miller at Memphis can run routes. You know, I mean, you're just pointing to him, right?
I'm pointing to Anthony Miller because I'm looking at this magazine, and it has all these receivers, and I'm looking at their bench press that they did at the Combine. I see 10, I see 15, I see 20, I see 10, I see 16, I see 22, Anthony Miller.
Yeah.
That's a 5'11", 190.
Yeah.
And he's a playmaker, too. I mean,
absolutely.
Now
he'll make some circus catches for you. And that's what I'm saying.
What's his range?
His range, I've mocked him to us at 50 before. I think he's somewhere between probably in that. We think just in the draft, so again, not calling it, but we think the run of the receivers is going to start at the top of the second round,
like Kirk and those guys.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of those guys. If it's not late 1, it's going to be the early 2. I think people are going to settle in and they're going to say, just start picking these guys one after the other.
So if you're the Cowboys, you're kind of in no man's land unless you want to spend 19 on a guy.
Yeah, that's what you got to know. That's what you have to know. If at 19 you might not get necessarily the best guy.
Is that guy Smith?
Who?
Anthony Miller?
Anthony Miller.
Steve Smith?
Yes.
No, I don't
DJ Moore.
DJ Moore is
more of a Steve Smith.
The guy that really that's more that DJ Moore's that way with the way he's a little bit thicker guy.
Well, that guy sounds thick.
Yeah. No, Miller's. No, these are all.
His comparison, and you know, Dane Brugler does a great job. His comparison for Anthony Miller was Greg Jennings.
Yeah.
The one that kind of has me thrown off a little bit is DJ Chark.
Yeah.
Comparison Ted Ginn. If
the quickness. the quickness.
That's the case at 6'3", 197 with a 40-inch vertical.
6'3", yeah. He's a little, and the Cowboys went and worked him out the other day.
Ginn's small.
Ginn's short.
This guy's
right.
This guy's tall.
And this guy played his whole college career without a quarterback.
The comparison then is with Ginn. His comparison is though when you watch Ginn play, the quarterback was a problem there. So the inconsistency of the player. Trust me, as an LSU alum, I've seen plenty of games where he makes spectacular plays. He's a dynamic punt returner. But I've also seen the concentration problems, the lack. It's one of those things that you would worry about if he got in a system like this and they're feeding him the ball, and he's inconsistent catching the ball, that could wear on a guy. You want a guy that's got a lot of mental toughness to be that type of player. I think more with what we were talking about, more from Maryland, makes a lot of sense. He's played with 8 different quarterbacks. He's seen a lot of bad balls. He's seen, he hasn't had a lot of success as with the wins and losses. But he's a tough kid that has production. That's why they brought him in, because you watch him play, and I feel like there are guys there. Again, I would worry about Sutton, not the physical traits. I would worry about, though, the scheme in which he played in. Can he be consistent enough coming in here and making a difference initially?
Can I ask you this? Does this team, tell me if this is a stupid question, does this team need a number one receiver the way they're constructed offensively?
That's a good question.
Is Zeke the deodorant for everything? If he's there for 16 games and is pounding the rock and getting you 5 yards of carry?
I asked Des Bryant this question one time because I asked him about the running game, and he says, and I've said it before, I never minded the numbers being down as long as we won.
Right.
With the numbers.
I always gave him credit for that because not all receivers are like that.
And now the minute they stop running the ball and stop winning, then and his numbers needed to go up.
Yeah.
But in this system, you have to put your numbers aside and say, okay, what made Cole Beasley such a good player for them 2 years ago? 7 targets, 6 catches. 8 targets, 7 catches. He doesn't miss passes. When you got the opportunity to make catches, I think that's the problem with Des Bryant. I think that was the problem with Des Bryant. Des Bryant didn't have those 1 or 2 extra catches a game to get his numbers up. He had a high target. He'd have maybe 10 targets, but 4 catches. Now, let me tell you, Hearns is a little bit that way too. Hearns could be a 10-target, 4-catch guy. You watch Jacksonville. That's exactly what he can do.
They need to come up with a new stat.
Well, I understand I'm just saying
targets, quality targets.
No, exactly.
Not the quarterback throwing it over my head.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the
counts as a target.
Where was Dez on drops though last year?
Too many.
He had too many.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, let's call drops then. Dez Bryant doesn't normally drop the ball. It's just that was a bad campaign for him.
He said he let things creep into his mind. Yep. Too much outside noise.
Yeah. He still had a better numbers than any wide receiver that was signed in free agency.
Yeah.
Well,
so he was average. He wasn't bad. He was average.
Yeah.
For him.
Unless you guys want to go in a different direction, I was thinking we wrap it up. Yeah. Where do you think we talked about where the Cowboys go next? What do you think's next for him? I mean, he's available now, free agent, got an opportunity to go somewhere else. What'd you tweet out, Mick?
He said, "I'll see you guys twice this year."
Well, there's 3 options maybe within the division.
Could be 4.
Maybe Houston.
Houston. You play him in preseason.
How far is Houston and Lufkin?
Not far.
Not far.
It's probably closer to here.
That's not necessarily a good thing.
No.
Would you guys be surprised if he latched on somewhere and picked up where he left off a couple years ago, before all the injuries?
If he ended up with a quarterback that was accurate and can throw the ball like Tony Romo would throw the ball to him, he could once again be Des Bryant that we knew. Absolutely, he could. He needs to. He's now he's got the bit between his teeth. Not that he always didn't work out hard. I mean, or get himself in physical condition. Now there's going to be that passion you see about working out and getting ready to play. This will be tough.
I think I don't know. I just see him going to San Francisco. Not sure why.
Playing with a good young quarterback.
I had New Orleans on my mind, but we're talking about, I had New Orleans as a team that Sean Payton.
They need a guy. They need a.
Oh, they've got that kid from Ohio State. A war daddy, but they, receivers are receivers.
Yeah.
If you can put a bunch of good ones out there, it's hard to cover them all. So we kind of thought here.
I think in your draft magazine, I think page 48 and 49 is going to hit your spot there. It may be Cortland Sutton.
Oh yeah, there'll be a lot of guys. Check them out.
Which, by the way, get yours today for only $4.95 exclusively.
Got a lot of eyes. Got a lot of eyes.
Shop.DallasCowboys.com or by calling 7-7 NFC Boys.
There you go.
Well, any final thoughts? Mick's scrolling through his tweets.
I was just trying to see if Des had any final thoughts.
He was tweeting a lot last night.
Yeah.
A lot.
I think he was very nervous.
I think
he was very nervous about what was going to happen.
Yeah.
I do.
Well, I think the Cowboy fans are probably a lot of them are upset, and because we talked about it, they were a better team on April 12th than they are on April 13th right now. However, you have to do this to open doors for something else. You might feel differently, but right now fans are frustrated. I don't blame why. I don't blame them because this team doesn't have the talent on receiver that they did yesterday.
That's true.
We'll see if it changes.
Yeah.
It's a good way to end it. Des Bryant officially released by the Dallas Cowboys. The only team he's ever played for. In-state guy, grew up just down the road. It's got to be disappointing for him. Disappointing for the Cowboys as well. I'm sure they would have liked to end his career.
Don't put your head in the sand. Keep going.
We'll find out where Des lands next.
But you just put $8 million into your salary cap for nothing.
We'll see what happens. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Check out DallasCowboys.com for all our coverage on Des Bryant's release. For Mick, for Nick, for Brian, this is Rob. Thanks to Kent for producing and everybody in the back. We'll see you next time.
This has been a production of DallasCowboys.com and the Dallas Cowboys Football Club.
How about this, Cowboys?